Welcome everyone! For the ones of you who don't know me yet, my name is Zucconi. I'm a lecturer in artificial intelligence and a science communicator. And if this is the first time you're watching, welcome to Gamedev Graveyard. This is the weekly show where we talk about games, prototypes, postmortems, and everything that is somehow related to the world of game development. Now, before we start, as always, a few communication. I know from YouTube statistics that 80% of people that are watching the show actually don't subscribe, which is terrible. So please, if you're one of them and you like what I've been doing for the past few months, feel free to subscribe. I think it really helps to bring the recommendation algorithms up for the channel. So thank you so much in case you have been doing that. Now, what's happening tonight or today, depending where you are, we are going to have, as always, a very relaxed chat with good folks from the game industry. And if you're watching, you probably know already who that person is from the title. But before I'm introducing them, feel free to leave a message in the chat, and hopefully we will have a chance to reply to all the messages and the comments and the questions you might have for me or for the guest. And hopefully this will satisfy with feel your weekly dose of shady goodness. There will be some shady goodness, I promise you, today. So I'm quite excited. Now, with that being said, the guest that we're having today is Mark Backler. He's the founder of the game studio games Sketchbook and Fourth State, and he's also the developer of the narrative game Lost Words, Beyond the Page. He's also an ex-Lionhead, Kuju, EA, Sony. He has been in Stugan, the first edition, he's a BAFTA crew member, he has done a lot of things, and hopefully we will have a chance to talk and address a few of those. I have quite some questions for Mark. So with that being said, let me introduce you to Mark. Hi Mark, how are you doing?
Hi Alan, I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Fine, it's a busy day, but I'm sure we can do it. Yeah. So, do you want to introduce yourself a bit?
Sure, yeah. So I started off in the games industry working at Electronic Arts on Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix as a level integrator. Then I went to Lionhead Studios and worked on Fable 2 as a scripter. And then I was at Kuju, Knick Knack, and worked on a few different children's games there. Then went back to Lionhead, worked as a designer on Milo and Kate and Fable the Journey. Then I was at Sony working on another Harry Potter game briefly, and then to Marmalade, where I was a lead designer on a bunch of different Hasbro mobile titles, and then founded Sketchbook Games after that, and have released this year our debut title, which was Lost Words Beyond the Page.
It's quite a lot of stuff. How many years have you been working in the industry?
It's 14 years now.
Oh God, I feel old now. No, I think it's good. And something quite interesting is that after so many years working, for big companies, you've actually decided to go indie. Why is that? Why doing the jump after so long and not staying in a sort of safe career? What made you do the jump?
I guess it seemed possible, and there was lots of benefits to doing it. And kind of when I first started in the games industry, it didn't really seem like an option. And then kind of when Braid was released and did really well, and I think that was the first time when there's kind of a story of like a single developer or a very small team kind of doing their own thing and releasing a title, and then it sort of made a lot of people stand up and take notice, and quite a few people from Lionhead and other studios in Guildford where Lionhead was based. I was seeing them try doing their own thing, and made me realize it was possible. And I'd kind of been working with Unity just for fun to kind of learn different skills, and then tried making a game which didn't go so well, and then was part of the Ludum Dare game jam when I made the prototype for Lost Words, and that I kind of really liked and decided to carry on working on. And I was sort of working on it for 2 years in my spare time, like on and off, and then ended up being offered some funding for it, which was sort of what made me take the leap to quit my job and start working on it. Otherwise, I'm far too like sensible and boring to take the leap otherwise, I think. But
So basically, can we say that we can blame Indie Game the movie?
so I can't remember on the timings on that, but I guess probably like it was probably in there somewhere. But so yeah, if it wasn't before I did that, then it would have been like shortly after, and kind of yeah, it's an interesting film. I'm actually in a film about indie games, game loading. Are you in that as well? You're probably making cameos.
Maybe who know? Probably yes, yes, probably.
Why not?
Why not? I don't remember. You know when you've done so many things that is like, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really bad. I should have a better memory, but I think after we've done like 50 events, like 7 documentaries, it's like, yeah, an
Yeah.
extra one.
It's just all big one big event.
Yeah, I'm so happy that right now I'm not doing any events anymore. I mean, for many reasons, but I'm really glad that it's a bit of a break for me because they were literally killing me.
It is nice to have a bit of a change. It has gone on a bit longer than would have wanted, but yeah, like we'd mentioned the other day of kind of when there's these big events going on. It was a different feeling when you're at home and you know they're all stopped and no one is going to anything, and you can just kind of focus on your stuff and not worrying that you're missing out on anything.
Well, now I think you only get FOMO if other people get invited to podcasts and shows, and it's like, I wish I was on that show. I think now it's a new normal, I guess. But in the meantime, if you have any questions for Mark, feel free to leave it in the chat, or if there is any problem with the audio or anything like that, let us know, and hopefully we can fix it straight away. Hopefully not. Hopefully everything is going according to plan. So, Mark, do you want to talk a bit about what Lost Words is while we're watching the trailer?
Sure, yeah. So, Lost Words is a narrative platformer game, half set in the pages of a diary and half set in the fantasy world of this young girl called Izzy, and she's aspiring to be a writer, and her gran is helping to mentor her. But then when her gran gets ill, Izzy is using the fantasy world as a means of coping with what she's going through in the real world. It's got a story by Rihanna Pratchett and a soundtrack by David Housden, who was nominated for a BAFTA for his score for Thomas Was Alone.
Nice. So, as you mentioned, you have been working on this game for quite a long time. So, the question is, why so long? Like, aren't game made in like 2 months? Why did it take like 7 years?
So it was kind of broken into different stages. So yeah, the game jam when I first came up with the concept was 7 years ago now. But the first 2 years it was I was still at Marmalade and just working on it on and off in my spare time. And then after that it was sort of working on the prototype, and then was working with an artist and a programmer and trying to get some funding. So then that was kind of the first year of full time. And then when we had some funding, sort of grew the team a bit. And then it was only really in the last kind of 3 years when we had a publisher and we had all the funding that we needed. that we could kind of ramp up development, and that it sort of really came together. But so yeah, it was sort of different stages. But yeah, the fact that it was sort of a longer thing also meant that you sometimes get team members who leave, and then you have to get someone else, and then some bits end up being kind of redone differently. Also, we did choose to iterate on it, which is just something that can take a while, but it can help the final experience, because you put things in and you test them out and you see what works and what doesn't, and you make things better. But you do definitely have to be careful not to go too far with that, and because you could work on a game forever, and it's like the phrase that no art is ever finished, only abandoned. So yeah, same. Well, yeah, video games being art, it's applicable here.
I think the artist dilemma, when do you stop painting? When is the painting done? I know it's something I'm very very guilty of that when it comes to making stuff, which is why you never see my games coming out. I guess. So something I on the show I talk about many games, but usually not many of the games I talk to are games where I felt in a way so invested. And I think the reason is that I've seen you working, or at least trying to get this game done, basically since when we met, which probably was 7-8 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
Just to remain to the theme of feeling old. And I remember that we were chatting once at London Indies, which I don't know if it's still happening. So for the people who are not aware, London Indies is or was, if someone is still attending, let us know. This meetup in Angel in London, where basically a lot of indies in London were just talking about games and chatting and drinking and having food and playtesting stuff. It was really nice. It was a very lovely setting, I guess. And a lot of the people I know today are people that I met at London Indies. I think it was quite a friendly event. And
Definitely.
I remember that we had a chat. I don't know if you remember, but we had this chat because you wanted to make this game where you flip pages, and you wanted the content to curve with the page as well. And we had this chat about, what is the best way to do this effect? Is it a mesh? Is it like a screen effect? And to this day, now I'm like, how did he do that? So how is it working? 7 years after, how is it done?
People who know more about it than me now, but I think it's a render to texture, and then an animated mesh. But I could be wrong, and we've definitely tried it a whole bunch of different ways. And but yeah, Luke, who's our technical wizard, is really good with sorting stuff for that. And I'm sure we did ask you about a couple of different points as well. So as well as the pages, there was the do we use a shader on the word scraps and getting it to look like paper, and getting them to scale dynamically to be the correct size for the word that's on the scrap. So thanks very much for your help at different points.
And I think that, if I remember correctly, I think that one of my suggestions was indeed to use a render texture. But if I remember correctly, at that time, you couldn't use render textures in Unity if you didn't have the Pro version. So it was one of those features that you had to pay for, I think. So I don't know if I remember the timeline correctly, but probably was.
I think I found some issues when I was trying to do it, but then I think when the rest of the team came to do it, I'd won a license at one point, but then we took so long developing it that ran out, and or rather they released a new version. So we had to get a license for the new one. So that would be what had allowed us to use that. But I think I had some issues with like the resolution of it to begin with. It's working pretty well now.
So I think one question that maybe some people might have at this point is like, why investing 7 years into making a game, or maybe because it's not actual 7 years of development as you mentioned. Maybe the better question is, why sticking so long on a project? Why, like, because I believe that many people would have just said, okay, this is taking too long, let's make Flappy Bird, let's make something else that maybe it's easier and can be published now, can be delivered now. So why sticking so long on a project? What was your intention with that?
Well, originally it was meant to be like a year and a half project, something like that, and
Ah.
then there was a period when it was always like 1 year away from being finished, and people would see me 1 year, and I would say, "Yeah, one more year left," and then see them the next year, and like one more year. But then we had dates, and but yeah, it was just trying to make sure it was ready and finishing it off. Yeah, for a long while it felt like we were kind of really close and on the cusp, but just wanted to make sure it was kind of the quality level we wanted it to be, and then when you put in several years of work, like, I guess if you feel fatigued and you feel kind of unable to like continue with something, then there's merit to doing something fresh and maybe coming back to it later if that works for you and feels right. But yeah, I'd sort of still enjoyed working on it and wanted to get it out there. And then when you start working with a publisher as well, they're invested in getting it out the door, and because we sort of raised funding through a few different sources, and so you've got other stakeholders, and yeah, all sort of wanting to get the game out there, and it's really rewarding to have people to play it as well. And I think when you do get to ship it's a valuable bit of the development cycle that kind of can teach you quite a lot. And even if it's not exactly the game that you originally envisioned it would be, it's still good to get it done and out there and learn from it, and then sort of take that on to the next thing. Yeah.
So we are watching, while we're chatting, we're watching now the gameplay video of the game. And now that you mention it, I've seen that in the different trailers there's a different release date, just to mirror what he was saying.
Oh, that's one thing I've learned. Don't put release dates in trailers unless you're damn sure.
Well, I mean,
Because you get the embarrassing thing of like coming 2016 and then it releases in 2020 and it's like, oh yeah.
well, I think it's good. It shows that making games sometimes, it's a more complicated process than people expect, even for someone that like you has been working in the game industry with a lot of experience. So it's not just a problem of mismanaging the time or not being a good producer. It's genuinely hard to make a game. And something that I was kind of interested when I was watching the game is that if I'm looking, for example, at the book mechanics, well, at the book scene, you have a lot of different mechanics around dragging words and events and things that happen that seems basically bespoken. So it seems that every 2 pages is a new puzzle that you have somehow to interact. Is it true? Like, or did you have to code every page basically individually? Or did you had like a sort of editor that allows you to have events and stuff? How did you manage to make the puzzles in that section?
So you've got like an event system built in, and there's some puzzles that you kind of we return to in different chapters in different forms. So we had prefabs for those, but yeah, there is a lot of kind of custom content and artwork and things for the diary. So there is quite a lot of sort of setting stuff up for each page, but wherever possible, we always tried to sort of set things up with prefabs and have it as reusable as possible.
Yeah, I can see that's probably the biggest struggle of game developers, to have to do like custom stuff per level rather than a sort of editor. I can see why this is why this is stressful. So something interesting is that the game is technically not proper out yet, but he has already received quite a few recognitions, and I know that in 2016, for example, when he was showcased at GDC, he got 7 nominations in the Game Connection Awards, and he won Best Indie Game, Best Story, and Most Creative Original. How was that experience? How was the setting? How did it happen?
Um, I remember I had been like taking my car to the garage, and I got a phone call saying that uh, yeah, saying it was from Game Connection. To begin with, it just sounded like it might be a spam call or something, and then they said Game Connection, and I was like, oh right, okay, and then they said that we'd been nominated for 7 categories, so and we never been nominated for anything like that before, and so it was pretty great news. I think I was heading to GDC anyway, so I was really excited to go along to the awards show, and kind of didn't want to hope too much, but then to pick up 3 awards, and you get cool statues for them as well. Nice trophies. So it was an amazing experience, really. And so the game's out on Stadia at the moment, so people can pick it up on there and play it, and then it's coming to Steam, Switch, PS4 and Xbox One early next year.
Too many platforms. I imagine the development, making sure it's all supported. I imagine the stress. And also, I think I've seen a picture of you with all the statues, which was really sweet. It was really nice. But I think that I haven't had a chance to actually play the game in its in its modern, its final incarnation. But I've seen a few videos, and even while I was editing, it looks so sweet. It's really nice, and I think that all the different pieces really work together. One question that I was kind of interested in is that why did you want to have the sort of 2 parts of the game where it's alternating the book with the actual 2D platforming aspect? Why did you felt it was important to have both of them? Because effectively it's 2 games, so you're not making your life easier here.
No, that's the lesson I've learnt the hard way with this, and we'll avoid making 2 games for one in future, I think. But so I guess I noticed when people were playing the game, like some people really loved the diary aesthetic and kind of fell in love with it, and then other people, they kind of felt like after a little while they were like, I kind of get what this is, and so I wanted something to like really surprise them and grab them, and I liked the way that some media, like in the Watchmen, when it's got the 2 kind of parallel stories, it's got the main story and the pirate comic that are kind of intertwined. I really liked the way that they did that, and thought it's a nice opportunity for some different storytelling, and kind of how the 2 sections are telling the same tale but in a different way and intertwined, or they seem completely different, but then you realize how they're actually the same at the end. And and it gave us a nice opportunity to kind of have a different visual style, and could sort of appeal to even more people. And I guess these days it's hard to have your game stand out, and so if you can have anything that kind of is gifable and looks interesting, then it's an extra string to your bow. And so having the diary then transition into the fantasy world of Astoria is a nice moment that you can share, and looks interesting.
I think that among all the sorts of inspiration for this game, Watchmen was unexpected. Especially because the comic in the Watchmen was all bad. It had a very different settings and scenario. So
Yeah, as well. That's why it's important to draw your inspirations from lots of different places, isn't it? But also, I think Lord of the Rings, I guess another quite different one, but another um, one that, yeah, I thought it was interesting how you've got like the fellowship splits, and then you've got the multiple stories that then, yeah, they separate off, but then kind of branch in together for the end, and so yeah, it seemed a good way of doing it, of having these kind of multiple story threads.
Happening, yeah. So while
Yeah.
while we're chatting, we're watching now videos with all the different evolutions of the game, starting from the original version, well, one of the versions from 2015. So how has the game evolved technically and mechanically from its Ludum Dare first incarnation?
So in the very, very first prototype, it was just like basically a Mario sprite and a white background because the theme was minimalism. And then, um, so yeah, that was even one stage before the 2015 one that we've seen in the video. And yeah, and didn't have the diary or anything. And then it just sort of grew over time because it was all to do with words, and so a diary seemed to make sense. And yeah, there was lots of potential for doing cool things with it, and the page turning for changing the levels. And then we just did all we could to make the game look as good as possible and to make it stand out. And then another iteration was we kind of took it from a 2D diary to a 3D diary because it would allow us to do more with the lighting and shadows, and get it to look even nicer. And the same thing with the fantasy world. That was kind of 2D concept art to begin with. But then we ended up, for similar reason of having the lighting, and we felt it would help us to make it look even nicer if that was sort of, or rather like 2.5D. So I think the elements, you've got 30 degrees that you could move the camera around and they'd look 3D, and then if you go too far, you'll see they don't have backs. But yeah, so it was sort of working with a team of talented people, and they propose how they think we should do things. And so I like to just try and work with the best people I can, and then leave it to them to like do their magic in their areas, and get the game working as well as possible and looking as good as possible, and sounding as good as possible. And so it's it's kind of the combination of the whole team's efforts really that's just helped it sort of change and grow over time, and evolve.
You mentioned something very interesting because I've been in a sort of producing role from my own projects, which terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And something I've noticed, both by working on projects and by being producing a producer of projects, is that very often if you hire talented people in whichever field they are talented, and you expect them to be an extensions of you, they tend not to perform very well, because if you just micromanage their creativity, you are destroying their creativity, because basically they become cogs rather than they don't shine. They tend not to shine as well as they would have otherwise if they had freedom. And maybe, at least what I've noticed personally, maybe your experience is different, so I don't know, but is that if you're working with other people and you allow them to bring a bit of their vision to the project, maybe you don't get exactly what you were hoping to get, but you're still getting something that is really good. Because it's the moment where you're actually getting out what they can really deliver well, rather than what your vision is. In a way, if they're good with art, let them do art. Trust their intuition and their sense of design. If you don't trust their intuition or the sense of design, probably they're not the right people to work with, I guess. How was that similar to your experience?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, there's times when I'll kind of give a brief for something, and then people, come back and it's better than I'd even imagined it. And then there's times when people will suggest something completely different to what I was thinking. And so, it's always nice when the game kind of grows and evolves organically, and it's not just this one thing, and that you're all working together to kind of make something cool. And that's the main thing, that you make the best game you can, rather than it fits to like some vision you had for it 4 years ago. And
And also, I think like if you have a vision and you want to bring that exactly into the world, you're perfectly valid. It's a perfectly valid things that you want to do. But if you're making the game for yourself, that's okay. If you're making the game for other people, then you need to take into account how other people react. Do they like it? If you have play testing, is it working? Is it not working? What is it meeting the player's expectations? Yes or no? And if not, what can be done? After all, if you have to sell it, you need to compromise in a way because it needs to sell. So it's something beyond your expectation. Of course, if you if you're trying to make something artistic, then by all means make it as crazy as you want and as unapproachable and as obscure as you want. But if it has to be something commercial, then in a way you obviously need to take into account players' feedback. So very likely your original idea will still need to be tweaked by the feedback of the players more than not just by the people that you're working with. Uh, at least
yeah,
that was my feeling, at least from.
yeah, I guess there's lots of different approaches, isn't there? Of like sometimes some people might just kind of, like you say, stick to their exact vision and make the thing that they wanted to make and just put it out there. And sometimes maybe because it's a bit too niche, it won't do all that well, or maybe sometimes because it was a coherent vision and there's other people like the person who made it who absolutely love that thing, it went viral and did really well. And so it kind of could go either way. And then but yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of merit to just getting your game in front of lots of people and seeing their reaction to it. And if you know there's sometimes you have to draw the line of like, we wanted the game to be accessible, but then if some people were having a problem with like running and jumping at the same time, I had to think, do I do something to fix that, or do I just accept that those are not the people that we're aiming this game for? And hopefully some people will pick up some gaming skills that they didn't have. But I tried to make it really accessible, and but then at that point, yeah, it was just like yeah, you have to kind of realize, yeah, this isn't the game for those people. If they're it's up to them, I guess, to try and see if they can kind of overcome that challenge and learn. But if not, then they might put it down and walk away. But you have to say like, that's okay, because yeah, you can't really make a game that's for everyone. And so yeah, we tried to make sure we kind of hit a good balance of welcoming some new players, but people who kind of have the like basic sort of gaming 2D platformer movement ability, and but then hoping that it also appeals to people who are gamers and have played lots of other games as well. But then with the narrative element and the puzzle elements, you hope it's got something that can kind of draw people in from both of those directions.
Definitely. So I also know that in 2015 you've actually taken part in the very first Stugan retreat, I guess we can call it like that. What was your experience with that? Because if I remember correctly, we're working on on Lost Worlds while you were at Stugan, right? Okay, so
Yes,
for
yeah.
the people that have not heard of Stugan, it was a lovely, it was a very, I think, unique initiative. Basically, it was a retreat for how many days? Like a month or so? How many weeks was it?
It was
Oh,
two
2 months, yeah.
months.
But basically, you're making games in the woods in a cabin, together with other indies. What was your experience with that?
Uh, yeah, it was pretty incredible. Like the Swedish countryside is really beautiful, and yeah, the organisers are great. The other teams were really awesome. Like everyone was so friendly, and yeah, got on really well. And there's the lake there, so we could go swimming and then go and work on our games together. And you've got, yeah, a bunch of other talented people. So if you're stuck with something, there's probably someone who could help, and they got different mentors out. So it was Tommy Palm, who was one of the people from King responsible for Candy Crush, and Oscar Berman, who from Rovio and worked on Angry Birds, and then Jana Palm as well, who was sort of with us the whole time, and running it all. And yeah, it was just a really amazing experience, and it's been great that they've done it other years as well. And the the previous year that they did, I went along and met some of the other developers there. And yeah, it's just such a nice atmosphere, and really great thing that they've organised.
The problem is with the lake and the woods and everything, was any work actually getting done? Because that was
I
one of my main worries. Well, I was very close to apply, and then I was like, oh my god, I have a fever and it's in the woods. Maybe I'm going to die from asthma. I wasn't sure if it was a real thing or not. When something is new, you're always a bit skeptical. Uh,
It did seem too good to be true. I think some of us were a bit worried we might, lose a kidney by signing up to it or something. But we asked around, and we met Jana at I think it was at GDC. She was kind of doing the rounds at different events, speaking about Stugan, and yeah, it was so different. We did feel a bit nervous about it, but yeah, it was so glad we got the experience of going along, and meeting all the incredible people. And yeah, I think the opposite thing was actually true of everyone probably worked too much, because the people, all hours of the day or night, it seemed there would be someone working on their games, and it kind of made it like if you were inclined to not do much, then seeing everyone else working is probably going to motivate you to knuckle down and get stuff done. But also, I guess they pick the people who you've already got something or a really cool idea, and you've been working on it already, and yeah, so it was quite kind of motivating. But then, yeah, so nice to just have the lake and countryside, so you could go for a run, or yeah, and had different mentors come around to give talks and advice. And they had a fitness person come and do a workout, and different like social events and things. So it was yeah, a really nice mix to, yeah, like a workation, it's called, isn't it?
I don't know. There were a few things that made me feel very nervous of going there, like the fact that you, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was quite isolated, like horror movie-ish. But you had to like book a car to get into the city center and get food, something like that. And I was like, I want McDonald's now. I'm sorry, I cannot
Well,
wait.
it was catered, and the food there was pretty incredible. So yeah, McDonald's was kind of last thing on my mind. But they there were like trips into town, but yeah, it wasn't super regular, but if you really wanted to get in, there was ways to get in. But I think you worry about stuff too much, Alan. I think you just need to go for it and see what happens.
Yeah, well, I think you're not the first one to mention that, right? And actually, I think the Robin Baumgarten, that was he with you, right? It wasn't the same.
Yeah, it was Robin who told me about Stugan in the first place. Robin discovers all the cool stuff. He told me about the train jam as well, and yeah, lots of other
And I
things.
think that we had this conversation, and I was like, Robin, but oh my god, I'm going to die if I go there. And he was like, of course, because the only two options are dying or not going, right? And I was like, exactly, Robin, exactly. so, so yes, I think that sometimes I need a more to take the Baumgarten approach to life.
Right. He does have a brilliant outlook on life, and yeah, he's so chilled and relaxed, but then
Oh,
does all these cool
oh.
things, and
But
he's
there were quite a few. So maybe not many might have heard Stugan, but I think that you might have heard some of the games that came out of Stugan or are still in working. Well, one of course is yours. So if you're watching now, you know a game from Stugan. Robin Baumgarten was also there. He's a German artist living in London. Now I think he's in Berlin. He went back to
yeah,
Berlin, and he has been working on a lot of super cool alternative controller things like Line Wobbler,
yeah,
Wobbler Garden, Wobble Spheres. So all a Christmas tree that was made with LEDs in King Cross Station. Amazing stuff,
yeah.
and they're all playful. They're all quite innovative. So maybe you haven't heard of him, but probably have seen some of his work. Induction was a time travel game from Brian Gale. It was in Stugan as well. I don't know if Brian was with you. Maybe not. Maybe it was. Oh,
Yeah.
it was with you. Yeah. Cadence, another game, was there. Secret Legends. Now it's called Tunic from Andrew Schuldice. What else? What else came out of that?
So Adam, who made a short
Oh my
hike,
god! Yeah.
was at but I think he was working on a different game, and then he made a short hike afterwards as a break, and then you like smashed it, and so now he's going back to finish off and release his Stugan game.
It's
Uh,
nice.
and
It's nice to know.
uh, Prism was a game out on iOS that I think did really well by Clint Siu, and yeah, that's really cool. Looks amazing.
I think maybe I should do like a sort of a session with the people from Stugan, and one by one getting them on the show. I would love that. And is Stugan still happening? Well, maybe not this year, but it's still running.
Yes, I think it was on hiatus for a year anyway, and then I don't think there's been anything concrete announced yet. But yeah, I definitely hope it's will be carrying on again soon, because yeah, it's such a brilliant concept.
So one thing that I think it's amazing of Stugan, but not just Stugan, like events in general, is the fact that you can do networking. And I know that a lot of people have really a negative connotation to these words, because it seems like you're sort of social engineering your way into the industry. But my experience is that many of the professional opportunities I had were happened because I knew other people at the right time in the right place. I'm thinking maybe if Robin didn't mention Stugan to you, probably wouldn't have gone there. I don't know. And I think it's something that is so important because, especially when you're an indie, you're traveling a path that maybe it's relatively new and not many people have done before. At least that was definitely true in the past, maybe not now. And so having the experience and the advice of people that were in different in your position years ago, for me it's very valuable because they can give you a lot of advice. So what was your take on these, and do you think that having worked in the industry for so many years helped you with that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a benefit, and it means you have a network of people that, yeah, you know. And so if you're looking to hire someone, maybe you already know someone who would be a great fit, and that you work really well with. Um, but then, on the other side, like it is good to advertise things and have it open and more accessible. So we're advertising for a producer role at the moment, and uh, yeah, so it's been cool to kind of get applications from lots of different types of people, lots of different backgrounds and experiences, and yeah, hopefully we can get someone really cool to help us take the game and the company to the next level. But yeah, I think working for a bigger company, or not even necessarily a massive company, if you can work at a small company, then that's really great experience as well, and often means you get to do more, because at smaller companies you have to wear more hats, and so you might end up doing, if you're a producer, you might be doing the community management and marketing as well, and so yeah, that can be really great. And then if you want to start up your own thing, you've kind of got that experience to utilize, and yeah, just kind of working somewhere with the stability for a while, and then to see how games are made, one way of doing it, and yeah, I think it's definitely can be really handy. But then I guess on the other hand, sometimes people who've jumped straight in from university, they've got a few more years of experience of making their own games, and sort of at one point it seemed kind of quite like an unknown and risky, and wasn't really a proven path. Like when I graduated, it didn't seem like that it was doable at the time. Although it definitely was, because like Ella Romanos graduated at the same time I did, and started her studio then. So yeah, she showed it could be done. But now, yeah, there's definitely more people doing it. But I think my personal recommendation, yeah, I would say if you're a graduate, then work on your own stuff, but apply for jobs and get a job somewhere else and get that experience, and then kind of do your own thing in your spare time, and then probably, yeah, getting it to a point when you can then release something, and so try doing it sort of low risk, and then yeah, it seems like a sort of a safer bet.
I think you mentioned two of the most important bits that I'm trying to do with my students. So for the people that don't know, I work as a lecturer at Goldsmith, and something I really love about the work that we're doing there is that in the two courses I'm supervising, basically I'm leading, and we want to make sure two things. One is that students have a portfolio, and so we try to give them a chance to work on projects that they can possibly use as portfolio. Doesn't always work, of course, but at least we try to give them the space to do that. And even more importantly, we encourage everyone to get an internship during the summer to work with a game company, or with a company that does something related to the game development. And usually, if they have no experience and they don't have massive skills on the tools that the company is using, they might not get the exact position they wanted. But I think that leaving university, leaving college, not just with the skills, but also with a professional experience, no matter how small, it's incredibly valuable. Because sometimes people only have a vague idea of what the industry really looks like, and they've never, maybe really in the game the movie was only their only idea of a career option, which is very unrealistic, by the way. So having a chance to work for a company, even if it's a positive or a negative experience, can teach a lot, because it gives you a sample of what the rest of your career, if you want to be, it's going to look like. And it gives an advantage compared to other students that might be leaving with a degree, but without any clue of how to start, how to get a job. And I think that if you use your time well, you can leave a degree and having, maybe a crappy portfolio, but you can have connections. You can have connections with people from the game industry that maybe if you did a good job, they might say, yes, let's give this person a chance to see what they're doing. And also, it forces students to get out there because we don't give them the internship, we help them, but essentially they have to do the job. We don't do it for them. We can't do it for them. And I think that it helped so much getting out there. So many of the opportunities I had were because I put myself out there and I send emails to people. For example, there's a game exhibition and I'm like, let's send an email to this person and ask if they want me to showcase my game. And stuff like that. And most of the time it doesn't work, but when it does, it does. So I think it's always helpful to get that.
Yeah. You don't ask, you don't get, and it's good to try and kind of light that fire for them and instill in the students that like anything is possible, and to start getting themselves out there and kind of applying for these things and working on your own projects, because it's kind of no reason that you can't use your time as a student to be making your own things, and that looks extra good on your portfolio when it's not something that you've been told to make. It's something that you chose to make because you're passionate about making games. And and with your projects, like some students just don't really care that much, and they just want to kind of get through and turn something in and not fail. But at the end of the day, if you want a job, then and you're going through all of that and you're spending that money and you're spending that time, you might as well give it 110% and make the best projects you can. And that way you don't you don't have to graduate with the crappy portfolio. You might graduate with a portfolio of really small but really polished things that looks really good, and that's all you need, because people aren't really gonna, even if you did make an MMO for your dissertation or whatever, when people are hiring, they're not gonna put in even an hour into your game. They're going to look at it for a few seconds if you're lucky, and if it did really grab their attention, they might look at it a bit more. But basically, a lot, like several small but really polished things are going to be much better than a whole load of really big but half finished and not very polished looking projects.
Definitely. And I think that the biggest killer, the biggest project killer, not just for students but also for us in the industry, is scope, wanting to do something massive. There's a game that probably always been wanting to make, which is like 15 levels, 30 bosses, a million weapons, multiplayer, Steam, workshop, level editor, everything. No, very likely no. You're just diluting what the game is if you're thinking about that. And especially for students that often don't have time, don't make a massive something massive that you don't finish and it's all make an appetizer, make something super well done that is incredibly short, and then I finish, I'm like, I want more of these. I like what I got.
That's the way to do
It's
it.
that often we get people that they want to make something big because they played big games, and I don't blame them, because the majority of AAA games are massive, but it takes hundreds of people, thousands of man hours, years of work. Usually for a project you have how many, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and not even full time. So you cannot make any of that. You simply cannot. So make something super sweet. Find a mechanic and exploit that. Do something around that and just that. And make it super nice.
Yeah.
Tiny but nice.
Game jams are really good for kind of instilling that mindset, because you've only got a weekend usually and you've got a theme, so you've got tight constraints, and then you'll probably have a few failures when you make half a game, if that, and it's a buggy mess. And so you kind of learn, okay, let's get like a really small idea, and then how can we scale it down? And so we've got the most basic thing, and then we just get that working on like the first night or first morning, and then we can kind of iterate and test it out and polish and make the most polished thing we can, rather than kind of hoping that it'll all come together last minute and then it taking longer and you don't have it finished for the deadline. And so that shows you how really small gameplay loop and nice tight experience that you can just put a bit of effort into the visuals and it goes so far. Whereas if you made this much content, then all that effort is going to be spread out between all of those assets, and it'll be lower quality. Whereas what you want is something small but amazing looking.
And also, you mentioned game jams, and Lost Words is a game that started as a game jam. So, to give some context, the prototype was made in 48 hours, probably less because I'm sure you had to sleep and eat, and then 7 years to make it on Steam.
So it shows how even when you try and start small, it doesn't always work out right. But imagine if we had, it wasn't a game jam game, and it was, we were thinking, okay, well, let's take a couple of years on this. Like, probably never would have been finished.
So something you mentioned at the beginning of the show is that what allowed the game to move to the next step and to be completed and to do the jump is also the fact that you had funding. How was your experience of getting funding for a game?
It's definitely hard. Lots of applications to different like grants and funds and publishers, and then because we had funding from different sources, that can make it kind of hard sometimes because they've got different restrictions, and so you have to make sure that they all work together. It was a lot of time to kind of find out about all the different opportunities and then apply to them. And quite often you'll sort of find something and you'll be looking into it, and then you'll read a condition of it that disqualifies you for whatever reason, and maybe it needs match funding, or you can't have investors, or
you're
you
not
need
British
investors.
enough.
Yeah. Well, you need to be a certain size. And then you've just spent all that time kind of looking at. But hopefully they're getting better, and when they have restrictions like that, they don't bury them within pages of documentation, and it's kind of a bit more straightforward and upfront on the website. And there are some really great funds around, like the UK Games Fund is probably one of the best ones, I think. Like, they're really good at supporting developers, and there's lots of really cool games that have got grants from them. So it's definitely worth applying to.
So there are a lot of different approaches to making games as a job. Essentially, they have to make money, right? So where is this money coming from? And some people they invest on a game personally, and then they hope the game will recoup with the sales. And some people, like me now, they don't even start unless they have funding of some kind, because personally, and this is personally my bar of risk, I guess, I will not risk my time and the time of other people if I'm not sure that we have funding for them, so that we can pay myself and other people, which I think it's very wise. The older you get, is wise to wait for that. And so it means that there are many projects that I would love to make, but I don't even dare starting for real, because I just don't have the funding for them. So what is your approach to that? Because obviously you started before having any funding, but now you got funding. So what was your approach? What are your advice for people that may be watching?
I guess I just enjoyed making it, and I didn't really know if I would get funding or if I would finish it, but I was hoping to get it done and released. And just in the game jam, like, it seemed to have potential, so I kept on working on it. And then it just sort of grew from there. I didn't mean to take as long as it did, or to have as big a team as we've had on it. And but I guess I would say just, do something for the fun of it, and then, see where it goes. Like if it's a cool project and you have an interest in it, even if it would take funding to finish it, like if it's fun to work on, then you could just, do that. If the alternative is, you're going to play some games or you're going to watch Netflix or something, and you're going to enjoy both, and I would argue that you perhaps would enjoy making your own thing even more than doing one of those other options, because it's something creative, and and it's good for you. And if you're just doing it so because you enjoy it, then it seems like a good use of time. And then if you get to the point when you're offered some funding for it, great. And then, I guess it changes into a different thing, and then it's a bit more like work, because you kind of have to do it. But then maybe, when you're paid to do that, you focus on that, and then you can have another side project that you work on for fun, and see how that goes. And sometimes, I mean, the things, even if it's something that has no potential or no apparent potential for like financial gain or funding, it can still be worth doing. And like with Robin, who we mentioned earlier, and Line Wobbler, it was like that started out as a just hardware
contraption
game jam. I think it was done in, and we're in a group who make video games, and there was Robin making something that takes him hours, days, weeks to put together. And so it seemed like there wasn't really the potential for making loads of money from it. He just did it because it was a cool idea, but then he liked it, and he showed it around, and other people liked it, and it took off, and other people wanted them. And then maybe now there's different installations being made, and so it's kind of, it was a cool thing, and a route to earning some money from it has shown itself forth, just because it was such a great idea. And whereas if Robin had thought, like, there's no way to make money from a LED game that I would have to build myself, and then never would have got off the ground. So I think there's definitely merit to working on stuff just for the sake of it, and because you enjoy doing it, much the same way as like doing a painting or writing a story. Even if you're not going to release it as a book, it's still a great thing to do.
I think you mentioned, basically, you describe at a certain point my afternoons, when you mention you stop working on your game and you work on something else. And sometimes it happens, and I'm like, I'm some stress coding this, let me code something else. So that is definitely something that I feel.
Well, people do have creative breaks, and like, while it can seem a risk sometimes to go and work on another thing, because then I guess if you've done that once, then my worry would be that you would do it again on that project and again on that, and then you would end up just working on lots of different things and not finishing any of them. But for some people, like Adam, who you mentioned earlier, his break project was a short hike, so it was a good job he did take that break. And then there's a few other examples of developers who've done that as well. And I think the developers behind Lumino City, I think they took a break from one of their projects. It might have been Lumino City, and made a mobile game that then did really well. And then they went back to, having that creative break to work on another thing just for fun can sometimes turn out really well too. Or sometimes maybe it does just, it doesn't turn into the shipped project, or you ship it but it's a small thing and it doesn't necessarily do that well, but maybe it still fulfills the goal of giving you a creative break and kind of refreshing you, and allowing you to kind of come back and carry on your original project with renewed enthusiasm.
Well, I think the show is called Gamedev Graveyard for a reason. It's the well, initially it was because I was going to show all the projects that I did and failed, or
Right.
well, didn't go forward. But I think the thing is that every project that we let die actually feels as fulfilled its purpose, even if it's dead, because it's still something where you learn from it. It's still something
Yeah.
that you had a lot of experience coding in, maybe, so even if never saw the light, it actually helped you get into the point where you are today. And we actually have a comment from Mitch McClellan. Hi Mitch, nice to see you again. Saying the game development club I was in college, VG Dev, emphasized finishing games within a semester and to have it playable at a public demo at the end. Yes, I think that's a very wise. It's a very wise thing. Maybe even a semester is probably too long. you know,
Well, if you get it finished as soon as possible, like in the first, week or something, and so you've got that like playable core game, and then you can kind of add bits and polish it so that you reach something really amazing at the end of the semester. But yeah, definitely lots of play testing and lots of time to polish, I think, are the ingredients for a great game there.
So I started at Goldsmith with one of my colleagues, Federico Fasceri's TN testing sessions, where basically every, I don't know, once a month or something like that, we have a space in the college where people have teas and biscuits and they can play games together. The college was a bit upset about bringing tea with laptops, but we have our ways. At least we still have the biscuits. And I think playtesting stuff and having something playtestable as soon as possible, it's super important. You don't want to spend a semester and then not having it playable. In general, I wasn't referring to, of course, the advice from each, but the earlier you can test something, the better it is, because if it doesn't work, you can fix it, or you can change to a different thing. If that's
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise the problem with finishing it kind of later is like, you get towards the end of the semester and you're just putting everything together, and then it's now playable and you put it in front of people and you realize that, the core concept isn't fun, or people don't understand it, or, one of any number of different problems, and then you don't really have the time to fix it. Whereas if you find that out early, you've got that time. And also it can allow you to pivot completely. Like with Lost Words, the idea was originally it was going to be a completely different game, kind of a bit like Tetris, but dropping words instead of blocks and having to jump up them with your character. When I ran the game, I didn't have any physics on the words, and but the character did have physics, and it dropped down in the middle of the screen and just stood there on the words which were hanging there. And I thought, hey, that's really cool. I've not seen that in a game before, and so I decided to make that instead. And so the whole thing kind of came from a happy accident, and because that was early on, and I had the time to kind of pivot and change, and yeah, that's always a great benefit to have. And I think that kind of feeling things out and seeing what works and what doesn't, and allowing the game kind of organically grow and evolve is a really good way of developing things.
So in the meantime, if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to leave it in the chat, and hopefully we can discuss it. But I know that Lost Words is made in Unity. We've been talking about random textures. So an obvious question, and one that I've been asking to all the people on the show, is how many versions of Unity do you have installed on your machine?
So currently it's just 2, but that was because I had to reinstall Windows a few months ago, and so I think I probably had about 5 then. But yeah, the refresh, which was a pain at the time, but has now freed up a lot of valuable hard drive room, and so yeah, just the couple now.
So wait, I think that I have to ask you a different question then. How many versions of Unity has the game gone through? Since like 7 years ago? Like, was like Unity 2.7 or something, or
probably something like that. I can't even remember what version. Yeah, I could go back and look up what license it was. I won to give me some idea and try and trace it back. But yeah, it's been a long while. It was before there was 2D in Unity. I was before they released the 2D mode.
So it's probably Unity 4 or
So
Unity 3 maybe.
yeah, sounds about right. I'd yeah, originally the game was made in Game Maker for the Game Jam, and then when I liked the concept and wanted to keep working on it, I remade it in Unity. And then when they released the 2D stuff, I kind of remade it in that. And then yeah, so it's had a few different iterations. And then I was using Playmaker, and then when I hired a great programmer, Audrey Profit, to work on the game with me, I said to her, like, you can do what you want. I've used Playmaker here, but you can tear it out if you wish. And she did. So yeah, we got rid of that and sort of redid it with proper code.
How was switching to so many different versions of Unity? Because I worked on console before, and one big struggle is that you cannot stick on a specific version. You need to upgrade because sometimes it's a requirement from the platform for stability, security, and stuff like that. So how did you find the transition between all the different versions of Unity across those years? Was it like crazy, or was it easy to switch? And
I think there's a variety. Like sometimes you upgrade it and everything is fine. Other times you upgrade it and things break. And not being much of a programmer myself, I didn't know how to fix it. So that was quite frustrating to have issues like that. Now I'm very fortunate that I'm working with several talented programmers, and so they can upgrade it for us when we need to. But it is still tricky because like as we're porting to multiple console platforms, it means some of them need specific versions of Unity, and it being on Stadia as well, there was kind of we needed a certain version for that, which was I think a little bit older than some of the other ones. And then some of the software, you know, we use Wise, and that sometimes the plugin is only available for certain versions of Unity, and some of the other plugins that we use. So you're sometimes doing the, you know, upgrade dance and trying to balance this thing with that and make sure everything kind of works together. So yeah, it can definitely be a struggle, and especially as you come to release on the console platforms, and they require that you you upgrade to a certain version or downgrade.
I remember when I was working on Still Time and it had a PS4 and a PS Vita port, I had a problem with one of the assets I was using, and I got in touch with the developer, and I don't remember which one. Maybe it was 2D Toolkit. I don't know. Again, before Unity 2D. And I remember the absolute fear when they told me, "Oh, I don't have this problem. Like, this problem only happens on a specific Sony version for PS4 maybe, or PS Vita, I don't remember." And they were like, "I don't have the version. I have no idea to fix that." And I was like, "Nah!" It's a big problem. It is a big problem, porting. And it's one of those things that it's probably boring, but it requires so much, I wouldn't say skills, but so you have to be ready for everything. You literally have to be ready for everything. That's the only way I can describe it, I guess. But yeah, go on.
I was gonna say it's a good thing with streaming, and if things do move more towards that in future, of there's less platforms to worry about, and you know you make it for hopefully like one powerful gaming system, or for one cloud or a couple of clouds, but they'll be they'll all be, you know, really good gaming PCs, and then it's just streamed to mobile and all the other devices, so you maybe don't have to worry so much about loads of tailoring it for loads of different bits of hardware.
But you know, then my problem is if the company dies, the game dies as well. So I'm always like, you know, there are so many games that are being lost. Like, think about Flash, you know, already, because they're basically abandonware and we can't run that anymore. And so many other games that require servers and multiplayer, like Fortnite maybe. I'm thinking they're going to die. and we will never be able to play them.
There's some good video game preservation going on, isn't there? And like the National Video Game Museum and other groups kind of try and uh, preserve as many of those as possible. But yeah, it is a sad thing that yeah, sometimes these things kind of get lost to time.
Struggling. So we've been chatting for a bit more than an hour, and I think that the discussion about biscuits and McDonald's made me very hungry. So, Mark, if people want to find you, where they can find you?
So I am on Twitter. My handle is at Mark Backler, and Lost Words is at Lost Words Game. The website is lostwordsgame.com. We're on Facebook as well with the same handle, and Lost Words is available on Stadia now and coming to Steam and consoles early next year. So we've got a Steam page up if people want to wishlist us on there, and then you'll get a notification when the game is out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And for the people that are still watching, stick around because in a few seconds I'm going to introduce the next guest and I'm going to make a sort of announcement. I don't want to do too much clickbait, but hopefully some information that some of you might be interested on, I hope. But with that being said, Mark, thank you so much for being here with me tonight or today, depending on where people are. It was really nice chatting, and I'm so glad to see that the game is actually happening, and you know, after following for so long, it's really nice to see indie devs having, you know, succeeding on their project. So it's a really good feeling, especially I've been known you for so many years. I think it's really great.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's been great chatting, and thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.
So, with that being said, who are we going to have next week? It's actually quite interesting because I think that we've been talking about porting, and this makes such a nice transition. So, the guest for next week is Juju Adams. He's one of those mythical game makers that you're hearing about, and he actually specializes, guess what, on porting services. So you have a game, he's porting it. And it's a very interesting job. Basically, he incorporates all the things I despise about game development. So it would be quite nice to talk to him and see what he thinks about that. Why is he doing it, and what is the value in working on something like Game Maker, which is, you know, not usually seen as the sort of go-to game engine if you want to make a game in 2020 and put it on Steam. So I'm quite interested to know his point of view. And also he has been working on quite a few popular game, Hyper Light Drifter, The Swords of Ditto, Shovel Knight, and a few more than you probably know. So it's interesting to know what he has learned working on so many different games that have been so popular. I'm quite curious. He also used to run an unofficial Game Maker meetup and a Discord server with several thousand developers. So it's quite interesting. And I know that he has also an interesting career history, which not many developers have. So again, hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about all of those things. And on top of that, oh, hi Matt, I can see there's a few more people in the chat. So on top of that, the thing that I want to mention before closing the stream is that, as you probably know, for a few months by now, I've been working on a new project. This is another short documentary like the one I've done a few months ago about Conway's Game of Life. And what is particularly about this documentary is that it's almost done. Hopefully, the only thing that is missing is the credit scene. And so what you can possibly do if you want to have your name in the credits is join Patreon. All the people that have been supporting me for the past 3 months, which is how long it's been taking to make this video, will be included in the credits. if you want to be included as well, if you want your name to be included, you can join Patreon. Any tier, any amount of money, you can literally do $1. Please don't do $1. But if you want any amount of money, will be you will get it in the video. I'm going to edit it on Monday afternoon, so you have until Monday up to 10 a.m. That's when I'm taking all the names and putting back into the video. It takes like an entire day to render, so that's why it's a bit tricky to do it after that. And if you're on Patreon already, to all the ones that are $5 and above, you will actually be able to see a preview of the first minutes or so of the video, and I hope that will make you want to see the rest of the video, which will come out actually in October. And the reason why I've chosen October is because Conway Game of Life was first published for the public, for the general audience, in a Scientific American in the number of October, exactly 50 years ago. So I think it would be nice to have the short documentary coming out for the anniversary for the 50th anniversary of the first publication of Conway's Game of Life. I think it's a nice detail that a lot of people don't care, but hopefully the hardcore fans of the game, like myself, they will like. And as always, I want to conclude the show by saying thank you to all the people that have been made this possible. In particular, all those awesome people on Patreon. If you don't know, I just mentioned it, but in case you didn't know it before, for the past 5 years, I've been publishing content on Patreon, particularly game dev tutorials, but sometimes I talk about AI, sometimes I talk about machine learning, sometimes I talk about programming. There's a lot of resources. And if you're interested, you can either access some of those resources directly, or you can also do an annual membership, where it means that basically you can pay upfront for 12 months, and I'm releasing a new series, a new game dev tutorials, hopefully, a month. Sometimes it's AI, sometimes it's programming. Most of the time it's shader stuff, but I make a series a month and a new video every week. It's a lot of work on top of having a full-time job. So it's good to have the support of so many people. And as always, before closing the show, I want to say thank you to the newest Patreon this week. In particular, thank you so much, Alector. Thank you so much, Igun Tataev. Thank you so much, Kafrey. Thank you so much, Manbuff. Thank you so much, Michael Salzman. Thank you so much, Chad. And thank you so much, Kelly. Those are the new people that have been joining Patreon this week. From the last episodes. You will definitely have your name on the show. And again, if you're still on the short documentary, and again, if you want your name to be on the short documentary that is going to be published in October, you have a few more days up till Monday morning, 10 a.m. BST, arbitrary line around that time. Feel free to join Patreon. Any amount of any tier, any amount of money, even $1, and your name will be on the final video. Now, with that being said, thank you so much for being here tonight or today, depending on where you are on the world. And thank you so much for all the people watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.